I just want to come to you, Iraj, quickly. You sort of started off by making the point that the 2008-2009 financial crisis and the COVID-related crisis that we're presently going through are fundamentally different. In that the one was endogenous, as in a sense that it was within the system itself, where there were certain fundamental structural problems, whereas what we're speaking about now is exogenous. It's something external to the system. It's not self-induced. So when you spoke about the extent of the crisis, because it is something that's externally induced as opposed to something internal, is the potential not greater than for a bounce back, as opposed to the 2008-2009 when there were deep-seated structural issues? Now, that's not to say that there were not structural challenges and problems as we went into this crisis, but given that it was brought by COVID itself, so the potential to get back, and then related to that, because I know that there's a lot of concern out there where there's almost a tension between what public health specialists, experts are saying, and what those who want the economy open quickly are sort of saying. And it's sort of captured in this an unfortunate language that I'm going to use, because it's become so common in the sort of Trumpian language that the cure can't be worse than the problem. You know. So if you could just speak sort of a little bit about that, because I know you don't want to get into that issue of life versus livelihood, because I don't think that there is a choice. We have they both are equally important. But just the first point about the ability for us to get out of this quicker, given the fact that it was not, you know, structural necessarily, and how we have been how we've been responding to this health crisis in terms of what's probably also in the best interest of the economy, that tension.
Yeah, I think, Russell, that's a very central question here. In 2009 and in many other crises that we've had, they've been all financial crises. They've been crises that have affected the demand side of the economy. People have lost something, their jobs, etc., etc. And when the issue of demand or lack of credit, you can pump money into the system and the economy bounces back. This time around, we have a triple type of problem. One is the demand side, because we're just shutting things down, but we also is a supply side, because we're closing the economy willingly or intentionally. At the same time, we're affecting another dimension of economic activity, which is our what economists call it, the human spirit, the expectations, the confidence factor, and the hope. Whatever language you want to use, it all amounts to the same thing. So they are fundamentally different. And the fact that it's exogenous is, in my view, less important than the fact that it simultaneously shuts down the demand and shuts down the supply, which we've never had before in any of the crises that we've experienced before. And therefore, we got to think about it differently. We got to, I painted a picture which was very bleak, and you quite correctly pointed out that we have to face the issue. If you want to find solutions, and if you want to find ourselves out of this ditch that we found ourselves, we need to first have a very clinical understanding of what it is that we're dealing with. The COVID-19 crisis, for the reasons that Alan also highlighted, there was no lack of global coordination, and still there isn't, etc., has rolled back some of the fundamentals of the global economy. We cannot trust globalization anymore. We cannot just say, look, because China or India produces cheaper, so we must shut down our local mask manufacturers or ventilator manufacturing or alcohol or sanitation or a whole lot of stuff that we used to say, well, they are exporting to us much cheaper, we can't compete with them. Now we've realized, and it's not just South Africa, globally I'm talking, we nations have recognized that price competitiveness is not sufficient reason for industrial policy. You need to have accessibility, you need to have availability, and you need to have reliability over and above price competitiveness. Now, all of that means that when we want to reboot the economy, when we want to look at restarting the economy, we got to think a completely different economic structure. We need to build new industries that up to now were globalized in a whole range of areas, in a whole lot of nations and regions. So one of the impacts of this recovery over the next while is going to be for all nations and regions to reimagine their industrial strategy. And this is not all bad news. Actually, a lot of new opportunities for manufacturing, for services and food production and so on and so forth. So that is where we need to balance saving livelihood and saving life. Because what governments have been on their panic doing is put all their resources, public and private, put their resources in savings life, which is important. But at the same time, next door, every day, we should have another team working out what are the new opportunities. We know, for example, we're going to lose 400,000 or 500,000 jobs in our hospitality. But can we now start the industries that are the industries of the future in a whole range of areas? So this tension that has been created between public health professionals and economists who want to start, it's a bit of a false dichotomy. We don't have that choice. We can't start the economy when people are dying. So let's not create false dichotomies. Let's face the issue, put two parallel processes, identify the industries that we know they're going to die or substantially die down. At the same time, identify a whole range of industries that we know are industries that are going to come up, put them into the ground, create jobs and create revenue. Because every time that the president says we're going to spend another 100 million rand or 100 billion rand on very good national humanitarian causes, pension, food parcel, etc., tax breaks for companies to keep their employees, they are basically creating liability for future generations. That's plain and simple. At the same time, therefore, we need to create assets for the future generations. And that is what will serve the economy to come up and revive itself. So that's how I picture the situation and our challenge.
Just on that, Iraj, you're saying reimagining what a new or a changed economy may be post-COVID. How do you see renewable energy in this sort of new future? Is this not really a golden opportunity in many ways that's almost kind of forced on us? You know, the expression, don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Absolutely, Russell. I mean, not only clean energy or renewable energy, which is almost a no-brainer. Quite frankly, any minister or any government or any intellectual that argues against it is arguing against the force of gravity. But there are so many other areas. For example, we have to reimagine security. Up to now, we've been trained to define security in the form of tanks, missiles, and aeroplanes and submarines. We need to allocate resources differently. Security means different things in this age. Therefore, our resources need to be reimagined. Our government departments need to reallocate their resources differently. Private sector likewise. So that when I'm talking about reimagining, yes, energy is one part. But for example, water. In South Africa, we don't have a water strategy, and all the ministers of water that we've had over the past 10 years, they've turned out to be corrupt and unreliable and incompetent. They've stolen billions and billions. But if you ask them what is our water strategy, because you cannot take care of the health of the nation without access to water, without access and reliable and competitively priced water. So in this whole sector, there's a lot of investment to be done, a lot of jobs to be created, a lot of secondary and multiplier effect industries to be created, both on the production and on the services side. I don't want to go on and on, but I hope our audience and our colleagues take the drift of my thinking, that when I talk about reimagining, our energy has to be reimagined, our water, our food, our urban design. For example, for 25 years that I know, Alan and I have been at different tables talking about RDP housing and this housing and the other housing. The reality is that we haven't dealt with those, and we have let go of the actual cities that they have degenerated, full of potholes, and basic amenities don't work. Now we got to reinvest in that. And when we reinvest, look how many industries, from cement to brick to daily maintenance, if we do it, not talk about it, not allocate and steal the money, but if we do it, jobs will be created, industries will be established. So reimagining is not just about clean energy, but also clean and harvesting water, recycling water, etc., and allocating water between human settlements and economic activity. All these are part of reimagining and restructuring our economy. And COVID-19, in my view, has created exactly the right proportion crisis that we mustn't let it go so easily.